All right, traders, watch this video for Wednesday, June 26th, showing you the SPY. I always start off with the SPY. Kind of an ugly day today, but it is right back down, kind of testing what used to be, well, I would say kind of resistance right here for these 3 days, might become support. Plus, it's right in that buy zone that we look for. So if it's going to bounce, it should hopefully hold up pretty soon. Again, suffice it to say we're still, within a fraction of a point or something of, well, that's not the right way to word it. We're pretty damn close to all-time highs. How's that? So overall, strong market, and it's summer trading, so it's pretty thin out there. But here's what we're watching for tomorrow. AQB had a really nice 2-day, kind of 2.5-day run, put in a few red days in a row. It's holding up pretty darn well, so I definitely want to watch that for another leg higher. MGI finally found, if you want to call it, equilibrium after this huge gap up day. You had all these red days in a row. Finally today it closed about where it opened, so maybe it's ready to turn back up. I'm going to put that one on a chart going into tomorrow. ABUS, I was looking at this kind of tight coil here and it started to curl back up today. I didn't find a trade in it because it's, it was pretty low volume, but I'm going to see if it can't make a move back at this recent high from that big volume day, 4 days ago, 274. And if it gets over that, you might see a quick move to 3. So I think it's worth watching. VUZI had a nice bounce today. Had this one on watch coming into today. Never made a trade in it though, but it's certainly a nice bounce and relative strength. It closed pretty darn strong today when you look at what the market did. This one's kind of obscure, JAGX, but let me zoom in a little bit. It's kind of put in support for the last few days after all of these red days in a row. You can see the recent reverse split back here, and so even though this looks like it hasn't, like it's in a tiny range, I don't know, 2.5 weeks ago, this thing was actually over 16 bucks because of that reverse split. It is very, very low float, and it put in a green day today on a little extra volume. So again, it's kind of obscure, but I think it's kind of interesting if it can give any kind of clean setup maybe through 5 tomorrow. So I do want to watch it. RTTR, let me pan out a little bit here. I actually like this chart a lot. You had this big spike back here that took it to 135. Then you had a lower high on big volume that topped out at like 118. And then you had another lower high the other day that topped out at like 108, 109. And then today took out this high briefly on decent volume. It is very close to a potential big move in my opinion. Now, anything can happen, but got to have this one on watch. Overstock, just another red day. You had this big volume day. You got 2 red days on declining volume. So I'm going to watch that one for a possible bounce play setup. AMC. This is just me looking for a snapback bounce. I think, let me go to monthly candles. I think this is at all-time lows. It is. All right, so back to the daily. If these were 5-minute candles and I had this kind of shape and all of a sudden I had this, after this big downtrend, this little bounce and then another big push on, increasing volume, I would start to look for a bounce on an intraday basis. Well, the same applies on any time frame. So this thing, I don't know, 5 sessions ago, so about a week ago, was 1168. Now it's down at 948, straight down 4 days. I don't know. I think it's worth watching for a snapback bounce. Please don't watch this video and think this idiot thinks this is a strong stock or a handsome chart. It's not. But I do think it's a decent setup for a possible snapback bounce tomorrow. And remember, as you watch my videos, the only things I'm going to do is take trades if I get a proper intraday setup. So keep that in mind, right? Most of you know that already, but in case you don't, in case you're just discovering me. CRWD, recent IPO, tanked on its opening day and then went from a low of 56 to almost 80 bucks in about a week. And now we're 5 days down in a row. And it's fallen almost 20 bucks in the last 5 days. Another good candidate for a snapback bounce. DMAC, DMAC. I don't love this one, but it gapped up the other day. And usually when you gap up, right, and then you end up closing below the open and the next day you're even lower, usually these never look back. They just keep falling. And this one's suspiciously holding up fairly well. So over today's high would be over 515. You might get through this high from the other day at 525 and then maybe start heading back up to the high of the gap up day. I don't know. It's got decent relative strength. Certainly not beautiful, but it's kind of caught my attention a couple days in a row or 3 days in a row after that gap up. So I want to watch it. This is WKHS, which is, near the recent high back here was 327, lower high 297, then today puts in a high of 291. You kind of picture a trend line right here. My problem with it is, I like it over today's high, right? Over today's high, 291. I always look for potential catalysts or dominoes to fall to the left. And you have one here, 298, then maybe the whole number 3, and then maybe a run at this recent high. So with all that said, I like the setup, but then you always have to look at how far it's come. It's just come from 220 to get up here, almost straight up for 4 days. So that makes me think I'd like this to flag for a little while. Anyway, I'm still going to keep an eye on it. And then lastly, I have Lift LYFT, which is just kind of putting in a little tight little, tight little pattern here below 65. So I think it's worth watching if it can bust up through 65 on volume. Hopefully we'll find some decent gappers in the morning as well to add to this list. I'm going to highlight one trade from today, and this was Kern, and this was thanks to Nicholas. I made a short video today, but if you didn't see it, I had this on watch because Nicholas PM'd me yesterday and said, hey, this Kern looks like something you would have on Bounce Watch, and he was absolutely right, and I hadn't noticed it, or I just kind of forgot about it. Obviously, I saw this crazy move back here where, I'll give you some numbers. This thing went from 10.59 to over 70 bucks in 4 sessions. So then it puts in this nasty reversal plus 2 more red days. This absolutely looks like something I might have had on watch because something like this can get like a secondary squeeze, if you will, right? So Nicholas puts it on my radar, so I put it on a chart today. It doesn't look like it did much, but it did give a pretty darn clean setup. And I'll show it to you here. So this is what it looked like. Out of the gate, it gaps down. Now, I love something that I'm watching for a bounce on that gaps down. I love the thesis. I love the idea of buying it at the open on the gap down, but that's, that feels like a dart throw, a coin flip, so I can't do it. And unfortunately, this thing opens and just rips for like, actually that only was about 8 minutes, but it went from 21.20 all the way up to almost 24. So I couldn't do anything with it because it didn't give me a low risk setup, right? Then it comes down and then bounces and is kind of flagging sideways. So I called it long as it broke. I was on the mic, if you weren't in chat today, called it long right here. Kind of Tokyo style, around 23.60, looking for a quick move through 24 and then maybe a little mini squeeze. And here you go, 2-minute candles. So there's 4 minutes later, it hits 26. And I did get long right about there. So this was a really nice trade and it only took a couple minutes to pay pretty well. And then it kind of chopped around and rolled over. But that is all thanks to Nicholas, and it was a pretty easy trade, all things considered. And I think there's a good lesson there. I think it's just, if nothing else, if you're not a member of the chat room, and you're never going to join the chat room, and you're never going to join any chat room, and you just want to know a decent trade setup, this is it right here. Find a stock that's gone absolutely crazy to the upside, and then pulled back significantly for a few days on declining volume, and then watch for a low-risk intraday setup. And just like that, when they happen, let me switch to 5s here. When they happen, you can see they happen quickly, right? You get this little tight pattern. Once it breaks above this pattern, you've got nothing in the way but the high of day, which was one little spike, plus a whole number, which could be an inflection point, and then you get that. And then you just start scaling out into that. So look for that pattern. It's you could probably make a living, although to be fair, you don't usually get moves like this in any stock, but you could probably make a living just off of stalking stuff like this. All right, anyway, I'm done babbling. We'll see y'all in chat tomorrow.